All right, last time we left off, a little teaser about the clinical priority matrix. We're going to talk about that real quick now. I think it's important to acknowledge that when we're dealing with people, we're dealing with people baggage. All the stuff that's going on in their life is going to affect them and their interactions with us when they come to us for care. And remember, people come to us for care not because we're fun to be around and it's entertaining. They come to us for our services. And those services are to help them with the pain that they're in, to help them recover from the surgery. People come to us with the baggage of being a person, and also the baggage of the injury, the surgery, the stress that goes along with that, and that's a lot. We have to understand that oftentimes, because we have all of that stuff going on, it's easy for us to get inundated and lose sight of what's going on because of everything that's there. It's easy to lose the forest for the trees. But the nice thing is, we know that is very likely to happen. And if we know that it's likely to happen, we have two choices. Be an ostrich and put our head in the sand and act surprised when things don't get better, or we can actively guard against that. And when we start talking about the priority matrix, it's to help us actively guard against that. If everything's a priority, nothing is. We have all this stuff going on, and it all has to be addressed, and we have to do this, that, and whatnot. All of these things that are on the clinical priority matrix are things that we have to address, and it becomes very easy to make everything a priority. Don't. Everything is important. Nothing is more important than anything else. But we have to understand this, and we have to figure out what is actually the priority based off of everything that's going on today for us to focus on. How do we do that? And oftentimes what it comes down to is figuring out what not to do. We know we have to address all these things. What are we not going to do today? We have all those Post-it notes. I love Post-it notes. We have all these Post-it notes of things that we need to do. Which ones aren't we going to do? And let's focus on the ones that are left. How do we do that? By gathering the information, by gathering the feedback, by figuring out all of the stuff we talked about in that whole OODA loop process. We know human nature is to want to address everything and to do everything and become inundated by all the stuff that's going on. So we have to actively guard against that. First step to do that, it's our assessment process. We need to know everything that's going on. We need to have as many Post-it notes as possible. We need to figure out all the factors that are affecting this person that's standing in front of us that is coming to us for care. We have to keep in mind our perspective, though. It's easy to start going down and chasing rabbit holes. It's very easy to become very myopic with our assessment. Like we talked about, are we actually assessing what's going on and ruling things out? Or are we falling slave to our egos, seeing something that's shiny and then gravitating, trying to prove that that's what it is? So understanding that in our assessment process can be problematic is our first step to this. First thing we have to do is we have to understand nature is to become myopic. We guard against that. How do we do that? We take a step back. We take a second, we stop, we lift our head up, quit looking down this rabbit hole. We look at the whole situation, we take a step back. We observe. Once we figure out everything that's going on, once we have all of that information, then we have to orient ourselves. We have that list on the last presentation, all the different things that are going on. It easily can become overwhelming, but we have to orient ourselves. First, we gather all the things, all the variables, all the factors, all of the clinical priorities. Now we have to orient ourselves within everything that's going on. What do we know? How much do we know about what's going on? And again, the more thorough our assessment process is, the fewer unknown variables there are. We have to figure out what we know at this point in time. Once we've oriented ourselves and figured out all of the things that are going on, now we have to put some order to this. And if we take this version of the clinical priority matrix and we look at this version, it's the same thing. It's just visually a little bit different. Instead of all the chaos that's going on with this, and I did this on purpose, I wanted this to be kind of chaotic because that's what it's like dealing with people. All of this is going on. This is much calmer because there's boxes and lines and structure. That's our thought. That's our thought process brings that control, that structure to this. So when we list everything out, it's just simple. In my mind, it's this checkbox system. We have all these things that might be going on, we're checking the boxes. Once we know everything that's here, we are really starting to figure out what the sequence of ordering is in which we need to address things. Because the nice thing about it is it's not a it depends situation. Once we know everything that's going on, because of how the body and how the nervous system reacts and responds, it starts to create a very clear path for us. Yes, everything has to be addressed, but what has to be addressed right now based off of how the body is going to react and respond. So once we can start laying this out in an order, we start to have a path, and we can start to be able to see that larger path as well as what that next step in front of us is. Step 3, we have to make a decision. What are we going to address first? We'll get into the decision-making process with this in just a second. Once we've made a decision on which one of these boxes we're going to go after within the box, which specific priority we're going to target, then we have to act. Remember, as soon as we take action, it's not just action to do something, it's action to get feedback. I've got to continually strive to get that feedback. We have all these things going on: pain, subjective responsive pain. They failed several of our shapes. They have a 10-second breath hold, so we're concerned about the autonomic nervous system. They complain about fatigue with an extended period of activity. There's scar tissue, range of motion's limited. There's tissue health concerns. There's effusion, swelling. They can't generate force. Their accessory motions are limited. All of this stuff is going on. What are you going to fix first? You got to pick something to treat. Are we just going to throw a dart and hope that we land on something that helps? Or are we going to apply some structure to this? Or are we just going to go after what they complain about the most? They complain about fatigue, let's try to work on some fatigue. We need to bring some structure to this. And this is where, if you notice the priority list where the boxes are, this is where these boxes come into play. The items in the black box, a little bit higher, more importance in regards to the nervous system, the items in the red box, which are a little bit more important in the nervous system than the items in the orange, yellow, pink, and blue. So we can start to see a little bit of a priority. And earlier I said, well, nothing is more important than anything else. If we anchor that in how the body responds and how the body adapts, we can start to question that statement I made. And this is where these boxes come into play. Within the box, first thing we're going to do, we're going to take that list of all of those clinical priorities, and now we're just going to put them in the boxes based off of the clinical priority matrix. And we can start to see that some of them fall in the black box, some fall in the red, orange, and yellow, none in the lower two. So we automatically know what's up here, what's at the top of the list. This is probably a little bit more important to address today or get under control sooner rather than later, as opposed to trying to address some of the things down here. We need to address this, just maybe not right now. Let's decide what not to do today. And that's going to be everything from the red box down. Now, what we do inside that black box, we'll talk about how to figure that out in just a second. Where this comes into play is if you have a lot of experience, that's wonderful. We have to understand what experience is. By itself, it's not anything. You've worked for 20 years in the profession, wonderful. That's 20 years of your life you spent in the profession. All it means is you've made mistakes. Experience by itself means nothing. Especially if you've made mistakes and you continue to keep making the same mistakes, you're not learning. You're not getting feedback about your performance. You're doing things how you've always done it. We're not moving forward. So you have lots of experience, but if you haven't actively sought input, feedback about how you're doing, you just keep making the same mistakes over and over for a 20-year career. You're not progressing forward. You're not improving your skill set. You're not improving your thought process. Now, we know that in every profession, especially in the healthcare profession, with that experience that you gain, you're going to make those mistakes. But now, are you learning from those mistakes? Are you gathering feedback on what you could have done better? How could I have improved this? That takes a little bit of detachment. So with detachment, those mistakes lead to better pattern recognition, faster pattern recognition. You start out and you have a progression through your career to where now that experience is extremely important. Why do I talk about experience? Because we take this process, we itemize things within the boxes. Now your experience is what's going to help you figure out within this box which one's the biggest priority today. Out of everything going on, your clinical judgment is still important, but now it's not clinical judgment for all of them. It's clinical judgment within this black box. Which one is the most important thing today? They have a 10-second breath hold. There's swelling, there's scar tissue. Which one of those do we need to address today? Based off of everything that's going on with that patient and your experience, that's where your clinical judgment comes into play. Now, what if I've been on the job for 2 weeks? I don't have any clinical experience. How do I make this decision? Well, even in that situation, if you're just going to guess, then you have 3 to address. And whichever one of these 3 you pick, probably going to be more impactful than if you were to randomly go after what they complained about, which was fatigue. So we at least put you in a little bit better position for you to gain that experience. So we have to understand, we have a process of orienting ourselves and ordering everything that's going on, these clinical priorities. Then our clinical experience can help us figure out within each box which one we need to do. Because let's say today I choose swelling instead of the 10-second breath hold that I thought was the priority. Everybody's going to be different. Maybe that's extremely impactful. Maybe my experience was wrong and I really needed to go after that 10-second breath hold. We address swelling, things don't improve. Maybe then I pivot and I go after that 10-second breath hold. I'm trying to target that autonomic nervous system. All of a sudden, I pivot, I address that nervous system. It unlocks some things that I can move on. The nice thing is with this, if I address swelling and it doesn't get better, instead of continuing to go after swelling, now I know, well, maybe I need to pivot to one of these other things within the box. Once everything on this box is taken care of or significantly improved, then I can go into these lower level ones. Maybe I need to address some of that accessory motion on the first day, but I'm going to do it after I've taken care of the things on that black box. I'm not going to devote 45 minutes to the accessory motion, only 10 minutes to the stuff up here. Understanding where everything is helps us prioritize today and helps us ration our time so that we're spending an appropriate amount of time on the things that are going to be most impactful today. And then we're just working our way down. And eventually we should get to the point where if we've done a good clinical job, there's nothing left in the black box. And then we can start to focus our time and energy on taking away these other boxes and progressively moving them out of our rehab program. Anything in the black is always going to be a greater priority than the things in the red, which is always going to be a greater priority than orange, always greater than yellow, pink, and blue. Use your experience and what's going on in the situation to decide between what you need to address within each box. Understand that you don't just have to take care of everything in this black box before you go to the red box. This is where your clinical decision making comes into mind. But I do think that we need to spend a larger proportion of our time on those things that are in the black box versus in the red or in these lower boxes. Because the higher they are on this list, the higher the priority of the nervous system and the more ripples it can have into other areas. We have to keep that in mind. So if we take that clinical priority matrix, create some order within that, that can give us either a very clear path, and if not a very clear path, a clear next step. It also can give us options in case we don't get the outcomes that we're expecting. And so that way we're a little bit more precise with what we fall back to instead of just randomly going to something that may or may not have an impact on the person standing in front of us. So take a look at that. If you have questions, let me know.